She'll never get through the defenses, Annabeth said. Peleus will eat her. I hadn't considered that. The mist wouldn't fool Rachel like it had most people. She'd been able to find the camp no problem. But I'd been hoping the magical boundaries would just keep her out like a force field. It hadn't occurred to me that Peleus might attack. We've got to hurry, I glanced at Nico. I don't suppose you could conjure up some skeletal horses. He wheezed as he ran. So tired. Couldn't summon a dog bone. Finally, we scrambled over the embankment to the shore, and I let out a loud whistle. I hated doing it. Even with the sand dollar that I'd given to the East River for magical cleaning, the water here was pretty polluted. I didn't want to make any sea animals sick, but they came to my call. 3 wake lines appeared in the gray water, and a pod of hippocampi broke the surface. They whinnied unhappily, shaking the river muck from their manes. They were beautiful creatures, with multicolored fish tails and the heads and forelegs of white stallions. The hippocampus in front was much bigger than the others, a ride fit for a cyclops. Rainbow, I called. How's it going, buddy? He neighed a complaint. I'm sorry, yeah, I said, but it's an emergency. We need to get to camp. He snorted. Tyson? I said. Tyson's fine. I'm sorry he's not here. He's a big general now in the Cyclops army. Yeah, I'm sure he'll still bring you apples. Now, about the ride? In no time, Annabeth, Nico, and I were zipping up the East River faster than jet skis. We sped through the throngs of Neckbrick Ridge and headed for the Long Island Sound. It seemed like forever until we saw the beach at camp. We thanked the hippocampi and waded ashore, only to find Argus waiting for us. He stood in the sands with his arms crossed, his 100 eyes glaring at us. Is she here? I said. He nodded grimly. Is everything okay? Annabeth said. Argus shook his head. I followed him up the trail. It was surreal being back at camp because everything looked so peaceful. No burning buildings, no wounded fighters. The cabins were bright in the sunshine and the fields glittered with dew. But the place was mostly empty. Up at the big house, something was definitely wrong. Green light was shooting out all the windows, just like I'd seen in my dream about May Castellian. Mist, the magical kind, swirled around the yard. Chiron lay on a horse-sized stretcher by the volleyball pit, and a bunch of satyrs sitting around him. Blackjack cantered nervously in the grass. Don't blame me, boss, he pleaded when he saw me. The weird girl made me do it. Rachel Elizabeth Dare stood at the bottom of the porch steps. Her arms were raised like she was waiting for someone inside the house to throw her a ball. What is she doing? Annabeth demanded. How did she get past the barriers? She flew, one of the satyrs said, looking accusingly at Blackjack. Right past the dragging. Right through the magical boundaries. Rachel! I cried, but the satyr stopped me when I tried to get any closer. Percy, don't! Chiron warned. He winced as he tried to move. His left arm was in a sling, his 2 back legs were in splints, and his head was wrapped in bandages. You can't interrupt. I thought you explained things to her. I did, and I invited her here. I stared at him in disbelief. You said you'd never let anyone try again. You said... I know what I said, Percy, but I was wrong. Rachel had a vision about the curse of Hades. She believes it may be lifted now. She convinced me she deserves a chance. And if the curse isn't lifted, if Hades hasn't gotten to that yet, she'll go crazy. The mist swirled around Rachel. She shivered like she was going into shock. Hey! I shouted. Stop! I ran towards her, ignoring the satyrs. I got within 10 feet and hit something like an invisible beach ball. I bounced back and landed in the grass. Rachel opened her eyes and turned. She looked like she was sleepwalking, like she could see me, but only in a dream. It's all right. Her voice sounded far away. This is why I've come. You'll be destroyed. She shook her head. This is where I belong, Percy. I finally understand why. It sounded too much like what May Castellian had said. I had to stop her, but I couldn't even get to my feet. The house rumbled. The door flew open and green light poured out. I recognized the warm, musty smell of snakes. Mist curled into 100 smoky serpents slithering up the porch columns, curling around the house. Then the oracle appeared in the doorway. The withered mummy shuffled forward in her rainbow dress. She looked even worse than usual, which is saying a lot. Her hair was falling out in clumps. Her leathery skin was crackling like the seat of a worn-out bus. Her glassy eyes stared out blankly into space, but I got the creepiest feeling she was being drawn straight towards Rachel. Rachel held out her arms. She didn't look scared. You've waited too long, Rachel said, but I am here now. The sun blazed more brightly. A man appeared above the porch, floating in the air. A blond dude in a white toga, with sunglasses and a cocky smile. "Apollo!" I said.